Hello everybody, and welcome back to Aviation. And today I'm going to show you how LNAV and VNAV works on the Garmin 1000. Enjoy! So, let's first cover how the system itself works. Starting with VNAV, which stands for Vertical Navigation, say you just passed the LNAV or waypoint and you are now flying to the waypoint Keiki. Then we'll go to the waypoint camps. You say, I want to be at 3000 at camps, maybe to catch an ILS or something. So you put 3000 feet next to camps in the Garmin 1000 and the system is going to automatically calculate a specific vertical path according to the flight path angle or FPA that you input, in this case 3 degrees. Now, the point at which you start the descent is called the TOD or top of descent, and the point at which you level off or stop the descent is called the BOD or bottom of descent. Now, the Garmin 1000 uses color coding. You will see in blue your target manually inserted altitudes, and in white the estimated altitude when passing a specific waypoint that the system is automatically going to calculate based on your current position, flight path angle, and target altitude. For instance, camps at 3000 would be in blue, as that's what we selected, and the system calculates that we're going to pass Keiki at 3500 feet following that 3-degree flight path angle, so it puts it in white. The Garmin 1000 also uses another coding based on color and shape as well, which you can see right here. So large white text is for calculated altitudes that the system estimates you're going to be at when you pass a specific waypoint. The large blue text means that it's something you manually entered. The small blue text is an altitude that has been retrieved from a navigation database or has been manually entered and matches the altitude published in the navigation database. If you see that small light blue subdued text, it means that altitude is invalid, you cannot do that. And finally, when you see the restriction bar, it means that either you have to be at that or above, at that or below, or at exact that altitude when you pass that waypoint. Let's compare your actual flight path with what you see on the Garmin 1000. In this case, Keiki, which is your active VNAV waypoint that you can say by that little magenta arrow, comes at a heading of 097 degrees, 12.7 nautical miles from your present position, and 3500 feet is the altitude that the system estimates you're going to pass Keiki at. Then goes camps, also same heading, but at 4.4 nautical miles from Keiki, and you're going to be at 3000 then, that's your target. Then you have your current VNAV profile, which says your active VNAV waypoint is 3000 feet at camps. Notice this is different from your active LNAV waypoint. Your target vertical speed is minus 754 feet per minute, while your required one is the same. Why? Because the deviation, as you can see below, is 0, which means you're just on flight path. Your flight path angle is minus 3 degrees, which is perfect, and the time to the bottom of descent is 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Okay, so that's VNAV. Let's move on with LNAV, short for lateral navigation. The way most of your lateral navigation is going to work is via IFR flight phases. They usually consist of the SID or standard instrument departure, the en route part, the STAR or standard terminal arrival route, and the approach, which can be an ILS, a VOR, an NDV, a visual approach, an RMP, or even a GPS approach. There are plenty of different approach types. Now, you may ask yourself, why is the standard instrument departure called that, but the arrival is not called standard instrument arrival, but standard terminal arrival route? Well, the answer is pretty interesting. A standard instrument departure takes you out of a single airport, even a single runway, while the arrival usually takes you to a whole terminal area. That's why most general aviation airports, IFR equipped, use the STAR that the nearby congested airports use, so they had to use different names. One for, single runway departures, and other for the arrivals that take you to a whole area. In ICAO phraseology, that's called a terminal area. Now, the point at which those sections intercept are called the transition waypoints, logically enough. Note that a SID, for example, can have various transitions, and it's the pilot's job or the dispatcher's job to decide which transition gets you to the en route portion. You can do this automatically, for example, in simbrief.com, where the transition is going to be the first waypoint that appears after the departure, and the arrival transition is going to be the last one before the arrival. However, the sim brief does not give the approach transition. So for that, you can look at the free charts that you can get in skyvector.com, or for airports outside the US, you can just search on the web for the chart. You may find it. Remember, this type of structure is the most usual one, but it's not always used. You can have a vector departure, where you are first given radar vectors before going direct to a waypoint, or you can have a direct departure, which is usually most by general aviation airports, where you just turn directly to the first waypoint off the route as soon as possible. This usually happens, at non-tower airports or class Golf airspace, which is uncontrolled airport. Now remember, you can always type on the web Garmin 1000 Manual and get the Garmin 1000 Manual, read it. There is plenty of very useful information there. It's totally free. I totally recommend it. You can get a lot of information about how the system works, about terrain, even features that the X-Plane Garmin 1000 does not have, but you can get real useful information there. Now, let's go ahead with the practical part. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into the aircraft and prepare it for our flight. So let's open the door here to make it a bit more realistic. Let's start with the battery. That's perfect, and we're gonna start setting up our flight plan. So you go right here to the flight plan button. You put here your arrival airport. In this case, it's gonna be PHOG, Papa Hotel Oscar Golf. So you tap in here with one finger, Papa, two fingers to change the cursor, Hotel. What you are hearing is the system tests. PHOG. There you have Papa Hotel Oscar Golf. Enter and enter again. Now we're gonna select our departure airport, PHNL Honolulu. Select procedures and select our departure procedure. In this case, we're gonna do the Palai to departure and runway 04 right. Transition is gonna be LNY, load, and again procedures for our arrival into PHOG, which is going to be the Camps 3 arrival with LNY transition, enter again, and finally the approach for the ILS runway 02, and the transition is going to be Camps. Let's align Camps, enter. Flight course reversal at Camps, no. Minimums, yes, we're going to select the barometric minimums of 260 feet. And finally, you select load or activate. What's the difference? Well, when you activate the approach from your present position, we're gonna go direct to the initial approach fix. Do we want to go from a present position direct to that? No, we don't. So we're just gonna press that when we are close to it. For now, we're just gonna load the approach. Enter. Perfect. So the lateral path of our flight plan is set. That's the lateral navigation. Now goes the vertical path. We're gonna cruise at 10,000 feet. So we're gonna select 10,000 at a waypoint at which we're gonna be for sure already at 10,000 feet. In this case, I know that at Roshi, I'm for sure gonna be at 10,000 feet of altitude because this airplane climbs very well. So we're going to select 10,000 here. Perfect. Now, see what happens. 10,000 deleted. That's because we didn't press enter. So remember, always press enter with that altitude. Select here 10,000 and enter. Now it's in. Moving on, I'm gonna take my charts here. These charts come from Navigraph. It's an app that is sadly not free, but it's very good for navigation. So here's my ILS approach. You can see that at Camps we want to be at 3,000, like this. So I'm gonna select Camps 3000. That's the only two things we're gonna set for the vertical navigation. The airplane's automatically gonna calculate how much descent rate we need to be at Roshi at 10,000 and then at Camps at 3,000 with a specific flight path angle. In this case, that flight path angle is going to be 3 degrees. There we are, enter. Now, some of you may have the question, how do you know this flight plan? Like, how do you know that you're going to put that specific flight plan? Well, you can get it from simbrief.com, or you just put in your airline, your flight number, your departure airport in a cow code, your arrival airport in a cow code as well, your aircraft type, and the system is going to automatically give you your route. Just zoom in right here and you can see the departure, the LNY is the next waypoint, and then the arrival, which is camps 3 arrival. Now, take a look at this. The first part says vector. Usually you want to get rid of those vectors, but in this case we're going to follow the the departure just like it is. So if we go here to the Preflight to departure chart, you can see that you first have some vectors and then direct to Preflight. So that's exactly what we're going to do. As soon as we take off, we're going to turn right to a heading of about 130 degrees, and once we are established, we're going to go direct to Preflight. So our flight plan right here is set. That's perfect. Now, we have to set all the airplane apps, so let's go ahead and do that. Starting here from the top with the communications, I'm going to tune for my nav1, this VOR, the CKH VOR, right here. And then we're going to have standing by the LNY VOR. The frequency is right here, so on the standby we're going to have 117.7, like this. And on the nav2, I'm going to have maybe the ILS for runway 0208 left, in case we have, you know, to get back to the airport. Now for the common frequencies, you can select nothing here because we don't have ATC. Now for this green part right here, that's your autopilot panel. So we're going to select yaw damper, we're going to select flight director, so that we get these magenta things that tell us where to go. We're gonna first fly on the heading select mode, and we're gonna turn right when we take off to a heading of 130. So I'm going to select 130 on the heading. Perfect. For the altitude, we're gonna cruise at 10,000 feet. So let's select 10,000 feet. And let's start setting these little screens. So that's more or less a range that works. We're gonna select the wind information option 3. Why option 3? Because I think option 3 looks nice. So option 3 goes here. DME, which is distance measuring equipment, the bearing to the station number 1 and the bearing to the station number 2. Altitude unit's gonna be hectopascals. Why? Because if we look here at the chart, it says on the approach, right here, altitude unit inches. Okay, so it's not hectopascal, it's inches. Perfect. Back. Now we're gonna go to the transponder. Let's squawk, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 is a good squawk. And we have to squawk a standby. Perfect. And we're going to have this screen of the nearest airports ready in case we have to, you know, for any kind of problem, land immediately. So our cockpit is more or less set. Let's turn on the battery 2, navigation lights, pitot heat, engine inlet heat, wings and surfaces heat, everything about ice protection. Bleeder not yet, but oxygen yes, because we will need oxygen eventually if we have any kind of problem. Okay, cockpit looks good. Let's listen for COM2. Check that the navigation stations are working. They are. Okay, we have no signal from navigation 2. That's because it's a localizer, but it's okay. Well, not because it's a localizer, but because it's still too far. But we have the standing by. The important thing is that we do receive the Cocoa Head VOR, which we do because you can hear the Morse code. Okay, we can close the door now. And let's turn on the air conditioning. We are more or less ready to start up the engines. Yes, we are. So engine goes to start. Engine run. Engine start. Monitor the instruments. We have foil pressure. N2 is rising, N1 is rising. We have ignition. Oil pressure screen. And the engine is stabilized, so that's good. And we are ready for taxi, so let's pressurize the aircraft. We have a caution warning here. Okay, now just if we're wondering what's that altitude inoperative and inverter, well, those are explained books, because in real life the airplane requires no inverter, so that alert would not appear. And the altitude inoperative, it's also a book, because here the altitude is working just perfectly. Let's check one more time. Then we have here pressure, that the ice protection is working. We have fuel, we have electrics. Let's turn on the generators. There we go. And we are between the center of gravity and balance envelope, which is just perfect. That's called the weight and balance envelope. which means that we are not overweight or not balanced. Okay, now we can go ahead and taxi. So get here a bit of power. Start getting the airplane rolling nicely. Okay, we again have caution warning. Okay, it was nothing. Let's continue the taxi. Look at this. Such a nice aircraft. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful aircraft. Okay, let's take the airport diagram here. Because we're going to taxi like this. Okay, so that's Charlie, then goes Foxtrot. So let's take Charlie here. Now, are we ready for departure? Not yet, because we're gonna select flight level change here, because we're gonna climb at 100 knots. That's gonna be our initial climb speed, 100 knots. Let's select here. That's gonna make you climb as much as you can without losing airspeed. That's what the flight level change mode is for. Okay, we are here lining up the runway. So strobe lights come on. Okay, select 101, it's just 100. There you go. Take this power back a bit. Line up completely. And is everybody ready for departure? Cause I am certainly. Yep, I certainly am. Okay, brakes on. Mid power. Stabilized. Brakes off. Takeoff. Takeoff thrust set. Indications normal. Don't miss the center line there. There you go. That's better. 100 knots. Rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. And autopilot goes here. Look at this. Departure. Nice, 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 nice. Overflight. Look at such beautiful departure. Okay, climbing. Heading 130 is there. That looks perfect. So we are stabilized on our departure. Landing lights can come on. They should have come on earlier, but it's okay. And now we're gonna go direct to Palai once we pass vectors. So Palai goes here. Just make sure the cursor is above it and click direct and then activate. And let's go nav here. Nav. Perfect, so now we're going direct to Palai. Let's start accelerating. Maybe 130 knots, it's okay. And let's have the airplane climbing to 10,000 feet. So currently you can see that our active VNAV waypoint is 10,000 feet at Roshi, which is not our active LNAV waypoint, which currently is Palai, which is indicated by this little purple diamond or arrow that's pointing at Palai. We are at 132 knots of ground speed at a track of 115. That's our desired track, and we are as well at 115, which is perfect. We should be arriving at Palai at in about 9 minutes and 2 seconds, 1 second, 8 minutes 69 seconds more or less. There we go. Let's match the heading with our actual heading right here with this button. Now that really has no practical reason except in an emergency, because if you for some reason lose your GPS and you suddenly have to fly on heading select mode, if the heading is like this on a different heading, then it's gonna be like very difficult to have the airplane stabilized again. While if it is synchronized, you can keep it there with your actual heading. Even though GPS comes out, you can still maintain it. Let's just do example right now. I'm gonna select heading right now, gonna change to heading select mode, and you can see there is no feeling, nothing changes. I'm gonna go back to nav, nothing changes because our heading selector was matched with our current heading. That's a very good habit. Do that. I cannot emphasize it anymore. It has actually worked for me. It once did because for some reason my FMC was not working and I had to fly on heading select mode and my heading was already where my heading was, so I could fly perfectly. Okay, passing 7,000 feet. Remember that VNAV does not work for your climb, so here we're just using your flight level change. Now let's reduce the power a little bit so that we don't burn up those engines. $7,900. Get the range higher here. This aircraft's really good. This aircraft lets you have a lot of situational awareness, really tells you where you are, gives you a lot of information which can be very useful. I like this setting of the PFD as you have bearings, distances, maps, nearest airports right there ready. In this case it's telling you that the tower frequency for the closest airport is 123.9er, that to get to it you have to turn to a heading of 291. It's at a distance of 8.6 nautical miles. It has ILS and the longest runway is 12,173 feet long, which is a lot of information in case you really have to go to an airport real quick. Okay, now 10,000 is getting blue, which means we're less than 900 feet. Now we're less than 500 feet and we're leveled off at 10,000. We're gonna let the airplane accelerate to about 200 knots and then reduce the power so that the airplane cruises very nicely at 200 knots. There you are. Let's start reducing power slowly. 10,000. You can see we are 9 minutes from our top of descent, which is where we start our descent into our destination airport. There's 201, 202, that works. Bit more power, and we are stabilized on our cruising, guys. So here we're just gonna go direct to Palai. Then after Palai it's gonna go this waypoint Rashi, and then goes our descent. So I'm gonna stop the recording right here just for the cruise flight, just for the cruise part of this flight, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so hi again. We are now almost ready for our descent. We're just 2 minutes and 30 seconds from starting the descent. How do you know that? Because there's this little timer here that says time to top of descent, and also you see this little point in front of LNY. Can you see it? It's like a white point in front of LNY. That's our top of descent. So we're gonna start preparing for that. First of all, you can see that here we have our active waypoint, which is camps at 3000, and the reference one are gonna have us passing Keiki at 4,400 and LNY at 9,800. Now don't confuse those with the ones below, like TEPS, because that's not a reference one. It's an exact point. Because how do you know that? Because of the two lines above and below. It means that you simply can't be above or below. You have to be at that altitude. Okay, so let's select our, first of all, let's arm VNAV by clicking this button here. But it's not gonna work. Why? Because you are still 2 minutes, more than 1 minute from starting the descent. You have to be 1 minute or less to top of descent in order for it to work. So we're gonna start doing other stuff, like changing our cruising altitude to 3000, because if we pass the top of descent but we still have the altitude selected to 10,000, the airplane is simply not going to descend because we are telling it, hey, keep at 10,000. So let's select here 3,000. Perfect. Now when we see magenta things appearing right here, it means we are 1 minute from the top of descent. And at that point we're going to arm VNAV. There you go. Did you see that just appearing? That's because we're in 1 minute. Let's check that, cross check that. There you go. So let's arm VNAV by clicking this waypoint, this little button. You can see VNAV is in white or vertical path, which means the airplane is now ready to catch that path. So we want to take the power down a little bit in order for the pitch not to be, that low. We have the airplane starting to descend nicely. There we are, close to our top of descent. You can see the white dot gets closer and this needle starts moving down until it passes through the center line, which is where we catch it. There we have VNAV, now is in green, B path green, that's okay. Slight turn there to the left. Let's reduce the power a bit, again since the heading. Now let's do that again. And there we are, descending nicely. Now you can see here that our target vertical speed is 1,336 feet per minute. Our required one to keep it is 1,336 as well, because we're almost on the center and we are just 1 foot deviated. Look at how precise that is. We are following a flight path angle of 3 degrees and our time to the bottom of descent, which is where we level off, is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Active VNAV waypoint is 3,000 feet at camps, while our active LNAV waypoint is Keiki, which is just the one we're going direct to right now. Let's synchronize the heading there and reduce the power again a bit so that the airplane starts losing energy. More than losing speed, although it's true, it's a very nice idea to think of it as the airplane losing energy. When you come too fast on the approach, you have your spoilers deployed, your flaps down, everything, but the airplane still does not slow down. That's because it has too much energy, and you really have to get rid of that. So you want to get rid of it from earlier, like I'm doing right now, rather than waiting while you are very close to the runway and you have so much energy that you might end up going around. The thing here is monitor your instruments. That's key. Monitor your instruments. Do a scan. That's how it's called in IFR. Training. Instrument flight rules training. Or instrument rating training. There you do a scan of your instruments. You keep going from one instrument to the other and back to the same instrument and then to the other and back to the same instruments. Now this type of screens get all the standard 6-pack instrument in just one. You can see this is the 6-pack, the standard one, and this, on the other hand, is the now new Garmin's that have everything in just one. There we are, 6,000. Looks good. Now, once we pass Keiki and we're going direct to camps, we're gonna activate the approach. Because as camp is our initial approach fix, we can go direct to camps once we pass the last waypoint of the route, which is going to be Keiki. That waypoint right here, Keiki. Let's check our charts here for the camps 3 arrival. You can see that we are going to do this after Keiki goes camps and then right to the airport. Amazing. Now, where did I get these minimums from, these 260 minimums from? That's also from the chart, because when I sweep down the chart here, I take the ILS chart. Here on the top, you can see it says decision height, 260 feet barometric, 200 radio altimeter. So, I'm gonna select 260 because it's the closer to 254. Don't round it down, always round it up. It's better in aviation. Okay, close to 3,000 there, 4,600. It says at KQ we want to be at 4,400, and we're almost making that, 4,400. Okay, now we have a slightly lower B path, vertical path. And now that we pass KQ, I'm going to activate the approach by clicking procedure here, activate approach, enter, and that automatically tunes the localizer frequency right here. IOGG is the localizer frequency. It did it all by itself. There we have 3,000. Perfect. Let's reduce the speed a bit. Now, once we pass cams, the airplane might change to the localizer mode, in which it's going to start tracking the localizer to the runway because we're now very close. Okay, so you can see B path just disappeared. That's because we're no longer using that, as we are now on the final approach part. There we are, turning to the runway. The runway has to be somewhere over there. Yes, there is. You can see the PAPI lights there. Now we're getting to 3,000. The localizer has come alive. You can see the autopilot mode automatically changed to lock here for localizer. And we're going to arm the glide slope by clicking approach mode here. There we have now glide slope is in white, meaning that the glide slope is ready to be catched. It's armed. Now you think one thing is off, the other thing is armed, and the other one is on. Okay, the airplane had some trouble keeping that localizer, but it's regaining it. Let's again match the heading. 3,000 feet. We're no longer using VNAV nor LNAV, we're now using the ILS, currently tracking the localizer, and then we will track the glide slope down to the runway. Let's check that all our systems are ready. Have procedures here with the activate missed approach ready in case we have to abort the approach. Now you can see it's not in blue because we haven't reached the missed approach point, so we can't activate it yet. And our airspeed is decreasing a bit, so let's get it a little bit of power. There you go. Nice, nice, nice. Look here, right here. Everything looks good. Make sure everything is stabilized. Monitor the engine instruments. They all have to look good. Green. No strange sounds. Let's identify the frequencies. There you have. If you hear a Morse code, it means that that frequency is identified. Let's also tune this NDB just to have more situational awareness. And let's identify them. Perfect. Identified. If you hear the Morse code, it means the station is working. That's the way technicians tell you if that station is working or not, by turning off or on the Morse code. Okay, there you have the glide slope diamond coming alive. That's that green diamond coming down. It means we're close to intercepting the glide slope. We have a high pitch, which is very good, because once we intercept it, we're going to have a low pitch. So if we have right now a leveled pitch, when we intercept the glide slope, we will have a very, very, very low pitch, and we don't want that. So we want to catch it with a slightly higher pitch.
Landing gear.
Okay, landing gear warning, so landing gear comes down.
Landing gear.
As we have glide slope capture.
Landing gear.
Get a bit more power. There's the diamond coming in, and we have glide slope capture. See how the airplane pitches down. Perfect. Now we want to be at 2,400 feet at TEPS, and it's not a reference altitude. It's not a bit higher, a bit lower, a bit offset. No, it's 2,400 feet exact. There you are. Go around altitude is 3000, that's set, because here in our chart it says in case of missed approach, climb to 3000 feet on the OGG-VOR radial 0232 crane, which is the OGG-VOR, 130 nautical miles DME, and hold. That's already input there. You can see if we take the range higher, there's the crane holding. Have the missed approach ready, since the heading once more, and let's get flaps 10. Flyby. Look at that. Nice, nice, nice. So pretty, that serious. Okay, have the airplane lose a bit more airspeed. There comes our outer marker, that flashing O. It's our outer marker, which means we're on the outer part of the ILS. That's good. That was the way in which distance was measured in the early days of aviation, where no DME existed, no GPS existed. They measured the distances on the ILS with the outer, middle, and inner markers. There we are, established on that ILS. Continue monitoring your instruments. That's very, very important. 1,800 feet, we have visual contact with the runway, that's good. You want to have visual contact as early as you can. Even though we are instruments rules, we are in instrument flight, it's very good to have visual reference. Now, just if you're curious, that magenta strange shape that it's there, you know, with that circle and those semicircles on the top and on the bottom, that is the class Bravo or Charlie airspace. I think it's the Charlie one for this airport that surrounds the airport. So yes, that's the Charlie airspace that surrounds the airport. Now, Charlie airspace, you can think of it as crowded airspace for the sea, because it's airspace that is very crowded, but not that much, as in very, very, very congested airports like JFK or LAX or Amsterdam or London, or you know, that kind of big airport. Those have Bravo airspaces. Although in Europe the Bravo thing changes because it's Delta, but those are other stories. That's about airspace classes. I just wanted to share that with you real quick. That's the Charlie airspace of PHOG. Okay, flaps 30. Actually flaps 35, which are actually flaps 100 in the actual cockpit indications, but explain label them flaps 35. Okay, there is our airspeed getting slower and slower. Established. Yes, we are established. Everything looks good. 95. I don't want to get that low on speed, so I'm gonna keep the power up a bit. Get the range here for this map a bit smaller. There you go. Closer to the runway. Check. We have PAPI 1 red, 1 white, which means we are right on glide slope. That's good. Give this a bit more power. Oh, not that much. Remember, this airplane has no auto throttle, so you have to control the power by yourself. Now we're close to the runway, so let me recalibrate the controls here. Recalibrate. Save, 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 because we will be disconnecting the autopilot very soon. Get yourself in a comfortable position. Stretch your arms, your legs, your fingers, your mouth if you have been speaking like I am. Take your device, and autopilot goes, whoops, let's get rid of this, and autopilot goes off. This airplane is very sensible, so be careful. There we are, minimums, stabilized, continue. Reduce the power. Hold that attitude, and touchdown. I almost didn't feel it. Landing gear has touchdown, perfect, brakes on. Let's vacate right here. And welcome to PHOG. This is how you do an instrument flight that takes you from your departure to your arrival airport. Beautiful strobe lights come on, landing lights come off. I'm gonna taxi there. Yes, that's a good spot. So let's skip this. Flaps up. More power. Let's get now the altitude back to 0 because we're no longer gonna climb nothing. You know, this Cirrus aircraft is very easy to fly. It requires some training, however, some practice in order to butter those landings as well. It's very important that you practice this, use the Garmin 1000, use LNAV, use VNAV, and eventually try to fly in visual flight rules. Don't look at the cockpit, just look outside and fly by that. Okay, let's enter here the ramp. And let's park right here in this line. There you go. Parking brake goes on. Engine shuts down. Anti-ice goes all off. Bleeder goes off, oxygen goes off, navigation lights go off, generators go off, battery go off. Now let's open the door. Get outside the aircraft. And that's it. Thank you very much guys for watching. I hope this really helped you with masterizing your Garmin 1000 skills and your Oreo skills with this very beautiful Cirrus SF-50, the Vision jet, one of Cirrus's best aircraft. I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.